My brother turned my mom's funeral into a cringe tribute to himself. His face on the program, a song about him, and my aunt backed him. So I waited till the final prayer, then passed out something that shattered his whole act. I knew something was wrong the second I walked into the small Methodist church in Akron, Ohio, and saw my brother's face staring back at me from every damn funeral program. Not my mom's. His, a full-color, glamour shot-style portrait of Ethan, smirking like he'd just won a scholarship instead of, showing up to bury the woman who raised us. Under his picture was the title A Son's Journey. Not her name, not her dates, not even a verse, just his self-important garbage. I felt my stomach twist, but I tried to keep calm. Mom hated drama, and she would have hated this narcissistic circus even more. But then I heard the music. Not hymns. Not Mom's favorite old soul songs. No, it was Ethan singing. A recorded track of him belting out some awful acoustic number called The Woman Who Made Me Me. Except the verses were all about his dreams, his struggles, his future, with Mom mentioned like an afterthought. He even rhymed legacy with destiny. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I walked down the aisle, gripping my folder of actual, normal funeral materials, the ones I spent all night preparing, while half the family awkwardly pretended not to notice how insane everything felt. A few people whispered. A couple snickered. My cousin just mouthed WTF, and then my Aunt Carol swooped in. Carol, who always treated Ethan like the second coming of Sinatra. Carol, who once told me I had background character energy compared to him. She touched my arm and whispered, all sweet and fake, "Your brother worked so hard on this. Don't ruin it with negativity." I stared at her. Negativity? This is Mom's funeral. She gave that tight smile she uses when she wants to feel superior. Exactly. Which is why it's important to let Ethan grieve in his own special way. Special. That was one word for it. Meanwhile, guests kept filing in, picking up the program, and immediately doing double takes when they saw that mugshot-looking photo of Ethan instead of Mom. A few politely asked if there'd been a mistake. "No," Carol chirped to one of them. "It's intentional." By the time the service started, I was shaking with anger. Then it got worse. The pastor stepped up and announced, "We'll now hear a eulogy prepared by Ethan, celebrating his remarkable bond with his mother." Ethan stood, straightened his tailored black suit, walked to the podium, and launched into a speech that was 90% about his childhood accomplishments, sprinkled with comments like, "Mom always believed I was meant for something great." Not a word about her favorite books, her stubborn little laugh, her habit of giving away half her paycheck to neighbors in need. Nothing real, nothing human, just Ethan's TED Talk about Ethan. I watched people shift in their seats. Some looked embarrassed, others confused. Then he ended with, "She lives on through me, and everything I will go on to accomplish." I swear a couple folks actually gasped. The pastor moved to close the service with the final prayer, and Carol leaned over to me again. "See?" she whispered. "Let him have his moment." And that was it. The moment I realized nobody, not a single person, was going to stop Ethan's hijacking of Mom's funeral. They were just going to let him rewrite her life into his personal highlight reel. But I hadn't been sitting there quietly for nothing, because tucked inside my folder wasn't just the real program I designed. It was something else, something true, something raw, something that would hit harder than any speech he could give. And right before the pastor began the final prayer, I stood up, and what I passed out to everyone shattered Ethan's entire little performance. So completely that even Aunt Carol's smile cracked. People always assume the golden child versus forgotten child dynamic starts in some dramatic, movie-worthy moment. But with us, it was slower, like a leak under the sink you don't notice until the whole cabinet is warped and rotten. Growing up in Akron, it was just me, Mom, and Ethan. Dad bailed when I was 8, leaving Mom to do everything. She worked full-time at a clinic during the day, waitressed at night, and still somehow managed to make it to every parent-teacher conference with a smile that said, "I'm holding it together even if I'm not." But here's the thing. She didn't treat us differently. She never said Ethan was special. Never said I wasn't. She loved us the same, but the world around us didn't. Teachers fawned over him because he was handsome and charming even as a kid. Coaches bent rules so he could show up late and still play. Relatives slipped him money for his bright future. He got attention like it was oxygen. I got pats on the back and reminders to be supportive, because your brother has real potential. Mom didn't buy into any of it. She'd pull me aside and say, "Don't let them make you feel small. Ethan shines out loud. You shine quiet, but that doesn't mean you shine less." I held on to that for years. Still, Ethan milked every ounce of worship he got. By high school, he was insufferable. He'd talk about himself for entire dinners. He'd tell people Mom was his biggest fan, like she was just a member of his audience instead of the woman holding our house together. He wasn't cruel, at least not in obvious ways. He just didn't see anyone but himself. He'd forget Mom's birthday but flip out if we didn't make a big deal out of his. He'd borrow her car and leave it on empty. He'd promise to help with bills once he made it, but he never got close to making anything except excuses. Then Mom got sick. By the time she was diagnosed, late-stage ovarian cancer, Ethan had already moved to Columbus, chasing some half-baked music career and posting motivational quotes online like he was deep. He visited a few times, took pictures of himself holding Mom's hand, and posted them with captions like, "Cherish your loved ones before it's too late." He didn't even tag her. I moved back home. I took her to appointments, cleaned the house, helped her shower when she got too weak. I slept on the floor next to her bed the nights she was scared she might not wake up. She would squeeze my hand and whisper, "I'm sorry you're doing this alone." I wasn't alone. She was with me. She was always with me. Still, she kept asking about Ethan. Did he call? When is he coming back? Make sure he knows I'm proud of him. I never lied. I told her the truth. That he called sometimes, that he said he'd visit soon, that he was busy but thinking of her. I spared her the rest, the part where he'd cancel visits, the part where he'd forget what day her next scan was, the part where he once texted me, "Can you update me later? I have a collab meeting." Mom passed away on a rainy Thursday morning. Ethan wasn't there. He said traffic was bad. The funeral became my responsibility. The arrangements, the photo boards, the obituary, everything. I asked him to help with one thing, the program. Just one thing. He said he would take care of it. And I didn't realize what he meant until I walked into that church and saw his face plastered on every seat. That was the moment something in me, something patient and exhausted, finally cracked. After the shock of seeing Ethan's face on the funeral program, something in me just went still. Not calm, more like numb. The kind of numbness that comes right before a storm. But the truth is, the escalation didn't start in that church. It started the week before, when I realized Ethan was planning something, and nobody believed me. I'd been scrambling to pull everything together. Ordering flowers, coordinating with the pastor, choosing music Mom actually loved. I sent Ethan the obituary draft and the photo set. All he had to do was format it into a program. That's it. I even gave him a template. 3 days passed. Nothing. I texted me, "Hey, can you send me the program so I can print it?" Ethan, "Working on it. Trust me." That "trust me" was my first red flag. Ethan only said it when he was about to do something stupid, dramatic, or self-serving. 2 more days. No program. I called him. He didn't answer. Then he texted back, "In a meeting. Later." Mom had been gone only 9 days and he was already in meetings again. Finally, the night before the funeral, 9 p.m., he emailed me a PDF titled, "Final Program," for print. I opened it and froze. His picture, his name, his song lyrics printed inside like it was a concert pamphlet. A 2-page tribute essay that started with "Growing up. I always knew I was destined for greatness because of my mother's belief in me." 0 pictures of Mom. Not one. Felt like a punch to the chest. I called him immediately, hands shaking. He picked up sounding annoyed, like I was interrupting his time. "What is this?" I asked. "It's the program," he said. "You're welcome. I asked you to make Mom's program. This is about you." He sighed like I was being dramatic. I'm expressing my grief in my own authentic voice. Authentic voice? Ethan, her face isn't even on it. That's because she lives through me, he said. As if that was some deep, poetic line instead of pure narcissistic garbage. I felt something hot rise up in me. Anger, humiliation, disbelief. But all I said was, "We're not using this." He immediately snapped. "Then you can do whatever mediocre little version you want. But I'm bringing mine. People deserve to see my side." My side. Like the funeral was a PR opportunity. I tried telling Aunt Carol. She said I was being controlling. I tried telling my uncle. He said, "Just let Ethan have his moment. It'll blow over." Nobody listened. So I made my own version. Simple, clean, filled with photos of Mom from when she was laughing, cooking, gardening, hugging me, hugging Ethan when he was actually around. Real memories. Real life. I printed 75 copies at midnight, laid them out on my dining table, and cried from pure exhaustion. I wanted Mom. I wanted someone sensible. I wanted this weight off my chest. And then, because I was so worn down I didn't even see it coming, Ethan beat me to the church the next morning. He handed out his programs before I arrived. Everyone already had one in their hands. He even put stacks on every chair. It felt like walking into a hijacking in progress. My uncle avoided my eyes. Carol was all smiles. A few guests asked me if it was a creative choice. Creative choice. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat through his speeches and songs and performance, the whole thing building pressure under my skin like a boiler ready to burst. Because I knew something he didn't. He thought he'd taken the spotlight. He had no idea I wasn't planning to compete with him. I was planning to expose him. Right there. In front of everyone. And when the chance came, I took it. When I stood up before the final prayer, Ethan looked annoyed. Like I was interrupting his encore. Carol actually reached out and tried to grab my wrist, whispering, "Sit down. Don't make this messy." But it was already messy. And the mess wasn't mine. I walked to the aisle with my folder in hand. People watched me, confused but polite, probably assuming I was about to give a short thank you or maybe share a memory. Ethan leaned one elbow on the podium like he owned the place, waiting to slip back in if I got emotional. I didn't say a word. I just started handing out the papers I'd kept hidden. Not the program. Not the photos. The letters. My mom's letters. The ones she wrote to us when she realized the treatments weren't working. The ones she told me to keep safe until the time is right. I'd planned to share only mine, maybe after the burial, maybe privately. But then Ethan turned her funeral into a vanity project, and I realized something. Mom deserved her own voice, and everyone needed to hear it. I printed her letters exactly as she wrote them, her handwriting scanned into clean copies. One letter for me, one letter for Ethan, separate envelopes, separate messages. I didn't open them. I didn't edit them. I didn't soften a single word. I passed them down each pew, guests whispering as they took the sheets and recognized the shaky pen strokes. Carol whispered sharply, "What I asked that? What are you doing?" I ignored her. Even the pastor paused, waiting. When every single person had a letter, I stepped back so nobody could say I was grandstanding. I didn't speak, didn't explain. I just let them read. And that's when it happened, the twist that made Ethan's entire self-centered performance collapse in real time. Mom's letter to me was short and warm. She thanked me for staying with her, for holding her hand at night, for making her feel safe, for loving her without conditions. She told me she was proud of the adult I became, that my quietness wasn't weakness, that she wished she'd had more time with me. But the letter to Ethan was not what anyone expected. People started reading his first. Their eyes widened. A few looked away, uncomfortable. Ethan snatched his letter from a woman in the front row, unfolded it, scanned the first lines and froze. His face fell, then stiffened, then went pale. Mom had written, "Ethan, I love you, but I need to tell you the truth before I go." He swallowed hard. The room was silent except for the soft sounds of paper shifting in hands. Her letter went on, "You were never around. You broke promises. You made everything about you. I kept waiting for you to show up. Not for me, but for yourself. I wanted to believe you would come through, but you didn't. I am writing this because I don't want your guilt later to turn into blame or stories that aren't true. People started glancing between him and the paper, unsure what to do. You are older now, Ethan. You have to grow up. You cannot keep performing your feelings. Real love is work. Real grief is quiet. He blinked fast, like he couldn't believe what he was reading. Carol stood up. What is this? This isn't, she wouldn't. But the letters kept going. Your brother carried me, not you. Do not rewrite that when I'm gone. That one line hit like a brick dropped in water. Ripples spreading across the entire church. People looked at me, then at Ethan, then back at the letters. His whole funeral performance suddenly looked exactly like what it was. A spotlight grab. A self-written myth. A lie. And that's when Ethan finally snapped. This is fake, he yelled, waving the letter like it was incriminating evidence. He made this. He's jealous. He's twisting things. But then the pastor stepped forward, holding his own copy gently. I knew her handwriting, he said softly. This is hers. The room went dead quiet. Ethan stood there, shaking, exposed in a way he'd never been before. And he didn't know that this was only the first twist. The second one, the one that would destroy the image he'd held onto his whole life, was still coming. Ethan stood there gripping Mom's letter like it was burning his hand, breathing fast, eyes darting around the church as people avoided looking at him. The whole room felt tight, like the air had been sucked out and replaced with static. Carol was whispering frantic nonsense under her breath, something about doctored scans and grief manipulation. But nobody was listening to her anymore. For the first time in my life, Ethan wasn't the center of admiration. He was the center of truth. But here's the thing, I wasn't done. Because Mom's letters weren't the end of what I had planned. They were just the part that opened everyone's eyes. The part that cracked his mask. The actual retaliation. The part meant for him, not the crowd, had been building in me for months. One long, slow boil of every ignored call. Every fake apology. Every time he'd swooped in to make himself look like a hero while I cleaned up the real work behind him. And it all started to crystallize the week before the funeral. When I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Mom's old phone. Not to spy. Not to pry. But because the hospice nurse told me that sometimes people leave things on their devices, drafts, notes, final thoughts they were too tired to finish. She suggested I check, just in case Mom left anything she wanted me to see. First, it was nothing unusual. Photos, recipes, voice memos of reminders to me. Then I saw the message thread with Ethan. Dozens and dozens of unread messages from Mom. Sweet, gentle check-ins. Updates about her treatments. Little I love yous. Pictures of me cooking her dinner. Memories she wanted to share with him. Barely any replies. And then one voicemail stood out. Dated 3 months before she passed. I pressed play. Her voice was weak, breathless, trying so hard not to cry. Hi, sweetheart. I know you're busy, but I really wanted to hear from you today. I miss you. I'm scared, Ethan. I need my boys. Please call me. Please. I had to stop the recording halfway through because the sound of her trying not to sob nearly gutted me. Ethan never called her back. Not once. He didn't even listen to the voicemail. Not until I forwarded it to him 3 days ago, by accident with a simple message. Found this while gathering things for the funeral. Thought you should have it. He didn't respond, but I saw that he listened to it. Twice, hours apart. I wasn't planning revenge at that point. I was grieving, just grieving. The revenge came when he sent me his final program draft with his face on it, and acted like I should be honored. That's when something sharpened inside me. I remembered the voicemail. I remembered the unread texts. I remembered how he posted about Mom's illness for sympathy but never showed up. And I thought, no, he doesn't get to rewrite her love. He doesn't get to steal her funeral. He doesn't get to be the hero of a story he never lived. So I printed the letters. I saved the voicemail. I printed screenshots of his unread messages. I had everything ready in a sealed envelope marked, for Ethan, after the prayer. But I didn't hand it to him yet. because my plan required timing. The church was still buzzing from the letters. People whispering, Ethan shaking, Carol holding a tissue she didn't actually need. And the pastor, trying to anchor the moment, gently said, "Would the family like a final word before we pray?" I stepped forward, not to speak, but to finally give Ethan what I'd been holding, the envelope, but he had no idea what was inside, or that it would lead to the second twist that would hit him even harder than Mom's letter. A truth he didn't know existed. A truth Mom hid from him for a reason. A truth that would finally force him to face exactly who he'd been. When I handed Ethan the sealed envelope, thick, heavy, corners slightly bent from being carried around all morning, he stared at it like it might explode. "What is this?" he snapped, voice cracking. "Something Mom left for you," I said. "Directly for you." That was true, but not in the way he assumed. He snatched it from my hand and tore it open right there in front of everyone, because of course he did. Ethan never waited for privacy. He needed an audience even when he was falling apart. The room went quiet as he pulled out the stack of papers inside. He saw the screenshots first. Dozens of images. All those unread messages from Mom. All those blue text bubbles with no reply. Her "I miss you" messages. Her updates about chemo. Her little jokes she tried to make to keep the mood light. His thumb froze at the voicemail transcript I'd printed at the top. The one where she begged him to call her back. A few people in the front row covered their mouths. Someone let out a low, horrified "Jesus." Ethan's face went gray. He looked up at me like he wanted to deny it, like he wanted to say these weren't real. But the timestamps and message headers were right there. Undeniable. Carol started shaking her head, whispering, No, he wouldn't ignore her like that." But he did, and everyone could see it now. He flipped the page, desperate to get to something. Anything that would make him feel less exposed. And that's when he found the typed letter. The one I hadn't seen until 2 nights before. The one Mom wrote but never gave him. The one she'd saved in her drafts file because she didn't have the strength for the fallout. The title at the top made him blink. "For Ethan. To be read only if you hurt your brother after I'm gone." His voice faltered. People leaned in. Even the pastor looked shaken. He read the first line silently, then the second. Then his whole face collapsed in on itself. Because the letter wasn't angry. It was worse. It was terrified. Mom had written, "Ethan, if you are reading this, it means you are trying to take up space that doesn't belong to you. It means you are hurting your brother the way you've hurt me. And I need you to stop." He swallowed. His hands shook. "I love you. But you have spent your life chasing attention instead of relationships. You rewrite every situation to make yourself the hero, and you leave other people to carry the consequences." Someone in the back whispered, "Damn, your brother has been my foundation. You have been my heartbreak. I don't want that pain to continue after I am gone." Ethan's breath hitched. He held the letter like it might slip out of his trembling fingers. Then he flipped to the final paragraph. The one that carried the twist Mom never told him in life. "Before you were born, I prayed that you would be a protector, not a performer. I prayed you would take care of your sibling. Instead, he has spent his life taking care of you. And one day you must face that truth." His shoulders tightened. But then came the line that broke him completely. The one Mom clearly hesitated to write. "You are not the son who needed me most. And I am afraid you will not become the man I hoped you would be unless someone finally tells you the truth plainly." Ethan let out a sound. Half gasp, half sob, and staggered back like he'd been punched. Carol reached for him, but he shook her off. Eyes locked on Mom's signature at the bottom. The church was dead silent except for his ragged breathing. He wasn't angry now. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't performing. He was stripped bare, forced to see exactly who he'd been, through Mom's eyes. But even that wasn't the end. Because once the shock settled over the room, the pastor gently placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder and said, "Son, there's something else. Something your mother told me to hold until this moment if she couldn't say it herself." Ethan looked up, confused, broken, unsteady. Something else? Something Mom had withheld even from me. Something meant to explain everything, including why she wrote that final letter the way she did. The real reason, the chilling reason, the one that would finally expose exactly how selfish Ethan had been, and why it cut her deeper than he ever realized. The pastor stepped forward so slowly it made the whole church hold its breath. He wasn't melodramatic, he was shaken. Really shaken. I'd never seen him look like that in all the years Mom dragged us to Sunday service. Ethan looked up at him, red-eyed and trembling, clutching Mom's letter like it was the only thing holding him upright. What else?" he whispered. The pastor didn't answer at first. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. Old, yellowed at the edges. Mom's handwriting unmistakable. He held it out to Ethan. "She gave this to me," he said softly. "3 months before she passed. She said she couldn't trust herself to tell you this without you turning it into something about you. So she asked me to hold it until the moment you needed the truth most." Ethan swallowed hard. His fingers shook as he opened the envelope. A single sheet of paper, folded in fourths, a little smudged, like she'd cried while writing it. He unfolded it slowly, and as soon as his eyes hit the first line, I saw something shift in him. Something dark, confused, almost scared. He read it silently, then again. His face drained of every trace of color. People leaned forward. I braced myself. And then the pastor, seeing Ethan couldn't speak, gently read the letter aloud. Mom had written, "Ethan, I need you to know the truth about why it broke me when you didn't come around." The room tightened. It wasn't because I wanted attention or praise. It wasn't because I needed validation. It was because I was hiding something from you that I hoped you'd be strong enough to handle one day. Ethan's lip trembled. The pastor continued, "When you were a teenager, 15, you told me you never needed me. You said you'd be famous, successful, important, and that family only held people back. I remember that day. He'd screamed it during a fight about curfew. I thought it was typical teenage nonsense. Apparently, Mom didn't. I pretended not to take it seriously, but I did. Cut me in a way you never saw. From that day on, I feared that if something happened to me, if I ever truly needed you, you wouldn't come." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "And when I got sick, you proved me right." Ethan let out a quiet, strangled sound. "You didn't stay away because you were busy. You stayed away because you didn't want the responsibility. You were afraid of being needed. You could not bear to be anything but admired." The pastor paused, voice breaking slightly. "And that's why your brother became the one I relied on. I knew he would show up. I knew he would be there even when it was hard, messy, unglamorous. I knew he loved me without needing to be applauded for it." People turned to look at me, not pitying, not sympathetic, just understanding. Then came the part that hit like a punch to the gut. The part Mom clearly dreaded writing. "The reason you hurt me the most wasn't your absence. It was that, deep down, I knew you would turn even my death into something that made you feel important." A collective breath sucked in across the room. Ethan's knees buckled. He caught himself on the pew. Mom had predicted this. All of it. His performance. His program. His need to center himself even in her final moments. She saw him fully and it scared her. The pastor finished reading. "If you are reading this, it means you have done exactly what I feared. I love you, Ethan, but love does not erase truth. You must stop hurting people who love you. You must grow up. You must face yourself." The church was silent. Ethan stared at the paper like it was a mirror reflecting back the ugliest parts of him. Carol looked horrified. Not at me, not at the letters, but at the realization that her golden boy's glow wasn't real. It had just never been tested. And for the first time in his entire life, Ethan had nowhere to run from who he really was. But the story didn't end with his collapse. Because after all of Mom's letters, all of the secrets, all of the truth laid bare, there was still the matter of revenge. The part where I finally put an end to Ethan rewriting reality. The part she would have wanted. The part he never saw coming. Ethan stood there shaking, clutching Mom's final letter like it was a detonator that had already gone off. His whole world, this shiny, curated image he'd protected for years, lay in pieces on the floor of a church in Akron. But I wasn't done. Not with cruelty. Not with pettiness. Just with truth. The pastor tried to move into the final prayer, but the room was too heavy. People were staring at Ethan with a mixture of shock and pity. The kind of pity that feels like a spotlight you don't want. I stepped forward again. Calm now. Quiet. Resolved. Before we end, I said, I want to do what Mom actually asked for. I reached into my folder one last time and pulled out a small USB drive, the one she gave me 2 weeks before she passed. Her voice had been thin, her hands cold, her eyes tired but steady. Play this at the service, she said. But only if Ethan makes it about himself. He will. And when he does, I want you to let me speak. She knew him, down to the bone. I walked to the pastor's son, who was running the small soundboard, and handed him the drive. Play the file labeled, For My Boys. A hush fell across the church. And then her voice, Mom's voice, filled the room. Soft, warm, tired, real. Hi, she said, almost laughing. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And it means my sons are together in the same room without me for the first time in a long time. Ethan covered his mouth with his hand. His shoulders shook. I want to say something to both of you, she continued. Something I'm afraid you won't hear unless I'm the one saying it. People straightened in their seats. To my oldest, please stop performing your heart. You don't have to be impressive to be loved. You just have to show up. Ethan closed his eyes, tears spilling down his face. And to my youngest, thank you for carrying me through the hardest part of my life. I hope you'll start carrying yourself with that same strength. My throat tightened. Then she said the part I'd replayed 100 times since she recorded it. I want the truth to matter. I want the people I loved to see me clearly. And I want both of you to live honestly after I'm gone. A breath. A long pause. And if Ethan tried to make this day about himself, well, you're probably hearing this because he did. A few people actually laughed, quiet, stunned laughter. Ethan crumpled onto the pew, hands over his face. Mom finished, I love you both, but love isn't about pretending. So let this be the last day we hide anything. The last day we rewrite anything. Let this be the day we start fresh, with the truth. The recording clicked off. Silence. Heavy, real silence. And then, a shift, like the whole room exhaled. The pastor finally stepped up and said the final prayer. Not for Ethan's ego, but for Mom. A real prayer. For a real woman, whose voice had finally taken back her own goodbye. After the service, people came to me, not with pity but gratitude. They told me Mom would have been proud. They told me the truth mattered. They told me the funeral finally felt like hers. Ethan didn't come outside. He stayed in a back pew, staring at the letters scattered around him like debris. I didn't approach him, didn't comfort him, didn't apologize. That wasn't my job anymore. As I walked out into the cold November air, I realized something. This wasn't revenge the way people usually mean it. It wasn't petty, or vengeful, or spiteful. It was corrective. A course correction for years of manipulation, performance, and emotional theft. The truth was the revenge. And it landed harder than anything else I could have done. Before I left, I placed the real funeral program, the one with Mom's smile on the cover, on the table by the door. Under it, I wrote a note. Her story, not yours. And for the first time in years, I felt free.